So picture this, you're having a blast jamming with some other musicians, but then the chord progression changes from a simple blues to something more unpredictable. And suddenly, all the blues licks you've memorized, they sound completely wrong. And your mind goes blank because you've hit the wall that every guitarist faces. You've run out of memorized material and you don't know how to create something new in the moment. I've been there, and so have multitudes of other guitarists that got caught up in the lick memorization trap. But here's what changed everything for me. Learning to think in chord tones and to connect arpeggios across the fretboard. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you how thinking in arpeggios rather than licks can unlock unlimited melodic possibilities, help you intuitively navigate the fretboard, and give you the tools to improvise confidently over any chord progression. Whoa, that's what I'm talking about. Open up your mind, grab your guitar, let's get into it. So if you're like many of the students that come to me, you're frustrated because your solos have started to sound limited and predictable. We're talking about what I call being on the lick and scale treadmill. You're stuck playing the same few licks over and over, which is inevitable because we can only memorize so many. And when we run out of licks, we fall back on some mechanical sounding scale pattern. And what happens when we're confronted with some sort of weird chord change that we don't know any licks over? Well, we got nothing. But then we hear other players that craft these long melodic lines that seem to flow over the fretboard like water. And you wonder, how the heck do they do that? More often than not, these super fluid players navigate the fretboard by connecting networks of arpeggios with other choice scale notes. I want to introduce you to what I call the connect the dots soloing method. The connect the dots approach is all about seeing arpeggios as a strategic framework or skeletons for melodic ideas all over the neck. For instance, over an A minor chord, I might play an A minor 7 arpeggio, which sounds okay, but it gets boring really fast. And how many ways are there to play an A minor 7 arpeggio anyway? Instead, I might make a lick with this E minor 7 arpeggio played into A minor 7. Or maybe C major 7 played into A minor 7. We could play G7 into A minor 7. Or even E minor 7 into D minor 7 into an A minor pentatonic idea. This is what I mean by connecting the dots to combine arpeggios, and we can do it all over the fretboard. But how am I choosing those other arpeggios, and why does it work? Let's look at a little music theory. I'll show you exactly what I'm doing. So we get arpeggios by playing every other note in a scale. Let's start with the C major scale because there's no sharps or flats, and that makes everything really simple. The notes of the scale are C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and we're back to C again. If we take the first note C, the third note E, and the fifth note G, and put them together, we get a C major triad. Major because that E note, or the third, is 4 frets or 2 whole steps above C, and we call that a major third. If we start on D and play the third note from D or F and the fifth note from D or A, we get a D minor triad. Minor because that F note is only 3 frets or a minor third above D. We can also add the 7th note in the scale from our starting point and we get 7th arpeggios. Adding a B to our C major triad gives us C major 7. Then adding a C to our D minor triad gives us D minor 7. And we can build out triads and 7th arpeggios off each note in the major scale, and this is what we'd get in the key of C. Okay, Charlie, so what's the big deal? How is this going to make me into a fretboard wizard? Well, here's the big secret. Most players limit themselves by playing the arpeggio of a chord over that chord, like A minor or A minor 7 over an A minor chord. But that's only scratching the surface. Here's the gold. You can substitute multiple other arpeggios from the key to play over any of the chords in the key, making up awesome sounding licks and phrases. And the fair question is, okay, which ones and why? Well, let's start off with arpeggios built off of each note of the chord that we're soloing over, and we'll use a minor chord as an example today. Let's use the A minor 7 chord to get started. A minor 7 has the notes A, C, E, and G. And the other 7th arpeggios in the key of C that start with those notes are C major 7, E minor 7, and G dominant 7. And what does that do for us? Playing C major 7 over A minor 7 gives us the C, G, and E from A minor 7, but it adds a B note or the 9th of A minor. Playing E minor 7 over A minor gives us E and G from A minor 7, but also B the 9th and D the 4th or 11th, and playing that E minor 7th arpeggio gives us a minor 11th sound over A minor. Lastly, playing G7 over A minor 7 gives us G, which is the flat 7 of A, but also B, which is the 9th, D, which is the 11th, and F, which is the minor 6th of A, and that really enforces the sound of natural minor. So by substituting other arpeggios from the key over a chord, we get some different sounds and colors than we normally would by just playing the same arpeggio as the chord. And here's another huge benefit that we get. Remember how I said arpeggios can be a framework for melodies all over the neck? Well, let's just take two of the arpeggios we just talked about, A minor 7 and E minor 7, and check this out. Let's use this A minor 7th shape at the 5th fret as our home bass. Well, at the 7th position, we have this E minor 7th shape. We also have an E minor 7 shape at the 3rd position. There's another A minor 7th at the 8th position. Then we've got both an E minor 7 and A minor 7 at the 12th position. And then the next starts to repeat. So we've got all this scaffolding or framework, and all we have to do is move around the fretboard and, as I call it, connect the dots by looking for E minor 7 and A minor 7 shapes that are near each other, and we find ways to connect them. Let's look at some examples. Here's a super simple one to start things off. We're going to use this E minor 7 shape at the 3rd position. When I get to the B on the G string, that's a perfect opportunity to transition to A minor 7 by sliding into the C note and then playing A, G, E, C, and finishing on the A root note. That's a nice lick. How about moving up to the 7th position and this common E minor 7 shape? Let's play it from the D or the minor 7 up to E, and then back to E, and we can use the G on the 8th fret of the B string to slide up into A at fret 10. And now we can descend through this A minor 7 shape. Now that's not a common shape. It's not one that I play often, to be honest. I just sort of found it when I was making up phrases for this video. I was just looking for that A note, but once I find that A note, I know that I can find G, E, C, A again, G again, E again, C, A, E, right? That's the beauty of knowing just enough theory that you know what notes you're looking for, and that's also the essence of improvising. Cool stuff. Let's try some more. Starting out with A minor 7 at the 5th fret, we're going to start on the A at the low E and play up 1 octave. And now I know that there's an E minor 7th shape at the 7th position, so to get into it, I'm going to slide into that A at the 7th fret of the D string. And then I can go to that E at fret 7 of the A string and play that arpeggio all the way up to the E at fret 12 of the E string. And then, now I can descend through the A minor 7 we used in our last example. Look how easy it was to create this great lick that just flows up the fretboard. It's got great colors and some cool sounding notes because of those two different arpeggios. Check this one out. We've got E minor 7 and A minor 7 shapes that literally sit on top of one another at the 12th position. And here's a lick where we're going to play 4 notes of E minor 7, 4 notes of A minor 7, 4 notes of E minor 7 again, 4 notes of A minor 7, 4 notes of E minor 7, A minor 7. Now that's not a shape we normally think of, but we've got the notes C, E, G, and A. And here's another weird E minor 7th shape, but it has the notes D, E, G, and B. And that puts us in the A minor pentatonic pattern 1 area, and we can just finish things off with something bluesy. That's another passage that I just came up with while writing this video, and that's the exact process that you have to go through to start creating your own arpeggio licks. I will emphasize to everybody watching that experimentation phase is something that you have to go through. And too many of you out there are waiting for a teacher to hand you everything that you need to play. Ultimately, you have to dig it out of the fretboard yourself. That's what makes this stuff really stick and how you develop your own style. You know those find a word puzzles where you've got this grid with all these letters on it, and you've got to find the words in there and they're backwards or they're diagonal or they're backwards and diagonal? Well, it's like that. Get yourself a fretboard chart, spend some time finding the notes of the 2 arpeggios in places where you can easily combine them. Then just experiment and see what you can come up with. Speaking of seeing what we can come up with, why don't we add another arpeggio to the mix? We can create something really uncommon that covers a lot of ground on the fretboard. Now, another note from the A minor 7th arpeggio is C. And we said the 7th arpeggio that starts with C in the key of C is C major 7. Now, there just happens to be one of my favorite C major 7 shapes at the 15th position. And after we descend to that B note at fret 16 of the G string, we can slide to G at fret 12. Now that G is a chord tone of both C major 7 and A minor 7. So now I can transition to A minor 7, and let's play up to the G at fret 15 of the E string. And from there, I'm going to target the E note at fret 12 to slide into, so that we can descend then through E minor 7. We're going to go to the D at fret 7 of the G string, and then slide into C at fret 5 and descend through A minor 7 again. So look at how much of the neck we just covered, and I love how that passage, it just flows together. Great stuff. Now I want to leave you with one last idea before we get too far into the weeds here. If you play straight up or down arpeggios, even though it can sound great, it gets obvious pretty fast that you're just playing patterns. So to make these licks sound even more awesome, we're going to mix in some other notes from the scale to make things sound random and more creative. Let's go back to our first example where we played this E minor 7 shape into A minor 7. Here's what we originally played. How about, instead of just descending through E minor 7, start on the G and play G, A, B, A, G on that high E string, and then descend to D on the G string. And then instead of going straight to B, play the C note first, and then B. So now we've got this for our E minor 7 phrase. And then we slide into C to play our A minor 7 idea, but we're also going to add D and E and D again on the G string before descending through the rest of the A minor 7 idea, and we're not going to play A minor 7, we're going to play the A minor pentatonic scale. That would sound like this. Here's our original lick. Here's our new lick. Let's apply these same ideas to that lick we came up with using C major 7, A minor 7, and E minor 7. We'll play the C major 7 arpeggio as we did before because there's a little slide in there that sounds nice already. Play A minor 7 like we did before also. But when we shift positions to play E minor 7, we're going to do a legato pattern on the high E string with E, D, C, B, C, D, C, and B. And then down to D at fret 7 of the G string. And now we're going to shift to A minor 7, but let's do another legato pattern with C, D, E, D, and C, and then play that A minor pentatonic down to the root. So here's the entire lick. C major 7, A minor 7, our new enhanced E minor 7 pattern, and our enhanced A minor pattern. Here it is, just a little faster and smoother. And a little faster yet. That's the kind of long, melodic, flowing lick that I used to dream about playing before I learned how to substitute arpeggios and combine them like this. After this video, I hope you're a believer in the power of moving beyond a bunch of memorized licks and using arpeggios for genuine melodic freedom. We only used examples over a minor chord today, but it works over major chords too. It also works for soloing over modal progressions, but that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother video. Commit to woodshedding this stuff. Commit to learning how to use chord tones to identify arpeggio shapes all over the neck, and then start experimenting to find your own combinations. Embrace this stuff and it's going to transform your soloing forever. As always, thanks for watching. Like the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you soon. Happy guitaring.